2005 has been a funny old year for WWE. There was always going to be a lull eventually due to how on fire they were in 2023 and 2024, but that doesn't make it any more fun when we do have a little bit of a drop-off. As impossible as it is, you want the product, as they say, to be great all the time. I will still always say that I am glad WWE turned John Cena heel, because if we stop taking risks, we're doomed. But they did sort of create a spiral of what-ifs as creative tried to get things back on track. As we are headed towards the end of the year, though, let's go through some of these and figure out what's next for WWE. Probably should have said that with a little bit more gravitas. Number 9, no Rock at WrestleMania. So I love The Rock in wrestling, and not Rock and wrestling, which was a very different thing. He's such a big star, the world stops when he returns to Raw and SmackDown, and that's what we need from time to time. When it was announced that he would chat to Cody-Rhodes on that one Friday night a few months ago, I pulled my car over to watch on the way back from one of my own wrestling matches. I had to know. I believe they call that power. Of course, the truth is WrestleMania 41's main event would just have been better had he walked down the aisle. The coming together of Rocky and John Cena at the Elimination Chamber had been awesome, and now we wanted a follow-up with very simple folk. The bigger issue, however, was Travis Scott came out instead, and that's why that entrance music got the pop it did. We all thought it was the final boss, meant there was an extra level of disappointment. It also went all the way back to WrestleMania 40 when the People's Champion had been the one to pin Cody Rhodes in that tag match. Although look, WrestleMania Saudi is coming soon. I do not think that one is totally dead. Things just would have been better had Dwayne Johnson been there to stand side by side with John when he won the 17 world title, but hey ho, he didn't. And I have a future to think about, so I'm not going to get overly worried about the past. It was still most definitely weird there wasn't a peak after this, but we all know the deal. The Rock is likely going to get nominated for an Oscar after his portrayal of Mark Kerr in The Smashing Machine, so I get it. I mean, it should have been the other way around. Find me somebody who's going to say no to that. Number 8, The Rock wants Cody's soul. So we just talked about this, and I'm not going to lie to you, and I'm sorry, I loved it. It was totally nuts and bizarre, and when you do watch wrestling every single week, turns out I need a little bit of insanity here and there. A megastar telling me he was about to go Shang Tsung on the WWE Champion's ass. Even better, Cody decided he would have to think about this, like he didn't realize he was in a Bart Simpson situation, and yes, it led to the Elimination Chamber angle, and all of this was great. It also did come out of nowhere, and the reason it's hard to place now is because apparently this isn't what The Rock wanted. The behind-the-scenes gossip that we will take with a pinch of salt is that it was going to lead to a Rhodes heel turn, when I assume Triple H weighed in and said, no way, he is the mega babyface we've been looking for, and while the time will come eventually, let's just wait it out a bit. It meant we ended this SmackDown with not much clarity, and even after Cena did turn heel, it was never really underlined why he chose to align with Rocky, because he wasn't there. We talked about it. In fact, apart from one veil aside, I don't think John mentioned Dwayne Johnson once, which is crazy. I mean, he jumped in with him. So it did make for a good TV moment because everybody was talking about this, but there were just too many loose ends. One of the strengths of WWE in recent times has been that everything feels airtight. This didn't. And Travis Scott. Want to get that in there again. That could be the whole reason, to be honest. That guy. In fact, number 7, Travis Scott. Let's get deeper because I need answers. Because forget John Cena, forget Cody Rhodes or The Rock, this really is the oddest one because what was his deal? Not one promo, not one match, not one nothing. He was at the Elimination Chamber because why not? Punctured Cody's eardrum when he slapped him too hard, returned at WrestleMania to get murked, and that was that. Poof! He vanished. He basically helped Cena win the WWE title too, so why didn't he do the same at Backlash or the rest? He just turned up for 2 shows and then went back to the Phantom Zone. If you take the, well, he's a celebrity out of it, it is some of the oddest booking for a long-ass while. What on earth was he trying to achieve? Genuinely too, I do not begrudge anybody coming in if they have a platform and they want to negotiate a deal, but you do have to make sure it makes sense. John never really talked about him either, and it did hurt all of the above due to what we've discussed. People assumed if Scott was at WrestleMania, The Rock would be too. They were meant to be a trio. Rumors also suggested Travis was meant to have a match but didn't really want to train, which again is his prerogative. But as a fan watching on, sheesh, this was pure 2 + 2 = potato. Just don't do it. Number 6, nobody cares about Bayley, who is definitely having a nervous breakdown of sorts. Now, I love what Bayley is doing because I just like Bayley. That sounds weird, but if she does want to go full goofy wrestling for life, I am not going to get mad at it. I suppose split personality is the best way to describe what she is going through, and of course we saw this happen to her in video form. She was recording herself as she went a bit crazy, and we could even hear her inner thoughts. That was a bit weird, but wrestling, let's lead into it. When Lyra Valkyria and Adam Pearce were talking about this, however, Pearce didn't seem bothered at all. poor Lyra essentially forgave Bells for costing her the Intercontinental title as she had seen what was happening, but Adam, well, he's got last-minute tag team main events to book, damn it. I do want to point out that Adam Pearce is fantastic in his role. This was just one moment where it went bonkers. It also felt weird because the whole point of the idea is to sell it. Bayley has been through a lot in 2025. I mean, she was taken out of WrestleMania, Becky Lynch ruined her life, and when it all got too much, shrug emoji, somebody else can just deal with it. Come on, Adam. WWE was just so good with this sort of thing a year prior, it was a bit off to be so blasé about a major storyline. I mean, imagine if everyone was like, Bayley, please listen to us, just sells the gimmick more. Instead, it felt like there were more important matters to attend to, like not booking the women's US title. I'm sorry, I shouldn't have said that. Number 5, the Wyatt 6 basically do the same. Which actually ties in here because the Wyatts sort of did the same thing. I just repeated the headline there. They were full on spooky wooky when they debuted and essentially killed everybody in the Raw gorilla position, and man did that work. They felt like they were going to be WWE's reckoning whether you were heel or face. If you did bad things, the Wyatts were going to be on your ass. Then a year or so on, they were just a tag team. This also followed a massive absence from TV, which didn't help at all, and the fact Nikki Cross does nothing is bizarre. We just mentioned the US title picture. She'd be great in that, a proper force to fight. It took months after they came back for Uncle Howdy to start getting back to his mind games as well, so for ages it was just Joe Gacy and Dexter Lumis as the tag team champions, as Eric Rowan ran distractions. That is so WWE by the numbers, and do not do that with the Wyatts. They have to be the outlier, otherwise what's the point? We've talked about this before. If you don't sell fear, then there is no fear. So it kind of felt like cheating to hold on to those belts wasn't necessarily representative of what the group was trying to do, and it was all a little bit after the fact. It was way better when they debuted, when it did just tail off, meaning we never got the answers to so many of those cryptic promos Bo Dallas was cutting. You know the ones, your soul's going to escape from your tuchus and climb up your nan. The hell are you talking about? When you do that as well, it essentially becomes hot air, and we do not want to get back to that. I really do not know why we sort of hit stop with them. They had something for sure. Number 4, CM Punk versus John Cena. Now let's not pretend that during John Cena's heel run, his best match was probably with CM Punk, because those two are just blood brothers when it comes to wrestling. I actually think they're incapable of having a bad match. Like they could be 92 years old, and you'd still tune in to see what they were going to do. Of course, when WWE decided to pull the trigger in 2025, we learned that it would be at the Saudi Arabia pay-per-view, where all of a sudden we got a meta storyline within a different storyline as we told a separate storyline. Because if you were a nerd fan, you knew about some of the tweets that Punk had made about heading out to Saudi Arabia. I suppose WWE thought there would be some backlash, so everybody kind of skirted around this by saying it without saying it, so it was kind of a part of the angle, but it also wasn't. Now, if you or Johnny just started watching wrestling, you were probably viewing this going, what the hell are they talking about? They were deliberately talking in code. Given that John Cena was the heel as well, we all of a sudden played this like it was him bullying CM Punk to going, otherwise he wasn't going to get his shot, and I kind of think that you just had to reference this or totally ignore it, not do some bizarre halfway house. Some people also had a problem when John Cena turned the tables literally on CM Punk and did his own pipe bomb promo, which of course was a nod from the one that Punk did in 2011. Now, I thought Johnny Boy was great there, but of course poor CM Punk had to lie in a table for around about 52 years, as some geeks watched on going, well, why doesn't he just get up? Now listen, you're 100% correct, and it is a fair criticism, but I'm also that guy. It's my favourite side of wrestling because it's totally silly. I think most people just saw the John Cena heel turn as an experiment when we never really pulled the trigger properly, and we've already touched on a lot of those bullet points already. I'm still always going to say that I'm glad that we did get it because that night of the Elimination Chamber was brilliant. But yes, if you do go through it with a fine-tooth comb, well, a lot of it does not make any sense. Ties into number 3, John Cena tries being a heel over and over again. So after he had gone bad guy, John Cena walked out on the following night's Raw and said that he was in an abusive relationship because the fans throughout his career had been horrible to him. I mean, he was telling the truth. You go back 15 years or so, my gosh, the audience did not like him. Now, instantly, people were happy to bat this back because if John Cena had done this in 2018, it would have made sense. But in 2025, during his retirement tour, well, WWE often cut to people in the crowd, and they were crying because they loved Jonathan Cena so much. Now, of course, you can argue that he was the villain, so he wants to remember what people were doing a decade ago. That does make sense. But also sort of felt like we were actively fighting the fans. You never want to do that. It also brought up a bunch of questions that were never really answered, like was he embittered by what Cody-Rhodes was doing? Is that the reason he did turn heel and now he had a thirst for violence? And was he about to reveal that this was the last acts of a desperate man? He knows the finale is in sight. He's even booked a retirement tour, so he does have to win that world title even though he's lost a step. Now, Cena did lean into that side a little bit, but we never made it the central point of the whole thing, which, yes, once again made it more confusing. Given the dates as well, often Cody Rhodes and John Cena had to do this alone, and that was going to be the big feud that paid off at SummerSlam. And while they did have some great back and forth on the microphone, I think there's a lot of you out there right now that just never thought it hit the heights that it should have done. And I think I know the reason why. It's because John Cena never had that specific direction. We were kind of booking it as we went. Number 2, what the flub happened to R-Truth? Now, when R-Truth got released in 2025, I was genuinely stunned. I was actually at my own wrestling show about to have a match, and because I was so mad about this, I went on social media and did a tweet. Yeah, that will show WWE. Well, as it turned out, lots of people went on social media, did a tweet, and the backlash got so bad, or good I suppose, if you want to look at it that way, WWE realized this was a stupid idea, and Ron Killings was hired back. Now, it's important to say the name Ron Killings, because for a few weeks he was back to his old character. He shaved his head. My gosh, he came across like a badass. It even felt like he wanted the United States title. He had a couple of matches with John Cena too, and actually wanted revenge on John for being so horrible to him. When Cena went back babyface, and from nowhere, like a magical man had clicked their fingers, Ron Killings had gone back to R-Truth. Now, I will tell you that he is one of my favorite wrestlers of all time, so I was kind of psyched about this. Why can't we have the dual personalities? I mean, that's a gimmick that he's been leaning into for years. Well, we didn't do that, and we just forgot that Ron Killings was being Ron Killings, and he was R-Truth again, doing the funny. And I want to double down on this, you know me, I'm still the same OG, and I love the funny, but we had this whole brand new direction we could go in, based on fans' outpouring of love. We just flushed it down the toilet. I presume that WWE just felt like it had all calmed down, so they didn't want to do something the fans had forced them to do, but it is such a damn shame. You'd have to imagine that this is going to be R-Truth's last big run in WWE, so we could have just given him a few months of programming. Instead, we did this. Now look, he's still going to make me laugh when he does do the whole goofy wrestling for life bit, which I do enjoy, but there was so much more here, man, and we did not take advantage of it. Number 1, the origins of NXT. Now, I cannot lie, I don't often get to talk about NXT, but it is one of my favorite promotions on the planet. And do you want to know why? Slap your head? Because nothing makes sense, and they do whatever the flub they want. And I really do think this is because Shawn Michaels has been told that he needs to grow the product, and the best way to do that is to kind of use it as an experimental ground. So if you do come up with a fun idea, you can likely get away with it in NXT. There's probably less red tape to go through. This was proven even further when WWE announced their deal with AAA, when basically we started doing all these Worlds Collide shows, and NXT superstars would go to AAA and vice versa. They even went after their titles. This also started to happen with TNA as well, and actually I think WWE is about to change this one, because the big battle between NXT and TNA is about to kick off. It's just hilarious how sometimes Joe Hendry will be going after the TNA World Championship on TNA, and then he'll be appearing in a fridge in NXT. Then Ash by Elegance comes back, and she obviously used to be there as Dana Brooke. Then Moose is here, there, and everywhere. Nobody actually explains who does book this, or how they are able to go through their own forbidden door, but my gosh, is it entertaining. I think if you remember that NXT is being treated as sort of like the little brother of Raw and SmackDown, is totally fine. But yeah, if you were going to write this down in a book and try and make a story out of it, nobody would be able to understand it because it's totally insane. And that is one reason why some people can't get into NXT, as well as the over-the-top characters. But in a world where I get this much wrestling every single day, keep giving it to me, please. It actually makes me laugh out loud. It is so damn wacky. So if you were brought up on a certain generation of professional wrestling, you would spend your Monday nights flipping from WWF to WCW before you went back to WWF and then checked out WCW. If you go back and watch that today, though, the crazy thing is that World Championship Wrestling actually goes off the rails pretty damn early on, as essentially the wrestlers become the inmates in the asylum that are running the place. Now, it's totally fun to watch in 2025 because it is so nonsense. But yeah, in late 1999 when Vince Russo arrived, well, I'd love to tell you I understand, but I
I actually don't. What we can do, though, is we can sit down and make ourselves a cup of coffee with I, Simon Miller, the Bald Idiot, and I will tell you 15 exact moments WCW booking stopped making sense. Number 15, the stretcher match that actually wasn't a stretcher match. So at Super Bowl I in May 1991, Big Sid Vicious was actually done with WCW because he was about to head to the WWF. It's not how contracts work, though, because he had one last match he had to do, so WCW booked him in a stretcher match against one El Gigante, who of course would go on to be the Giant Gonzalez. Just keeping you up to date. Now, that looks pretty woeful on paper for reasons you'll understand if you were born back then, but in many ways this could have been the worst combination possible at the time. Because due to all of the above, El Gigante beat Sid in just over 2 minutes in what was meant to be a gimmick bout. Again, it was a stretcher match. The thing is, though, to make it even more tragic, and hold your hats for this one, Sid Vicious didn't even leave on a stretcher as planned. He simply marched out of the building because, again, his WCW deal was done. What did he care? And he'd still be able to come back in 1993. I guess if you'd asked somebody from WCW management, they would have given you those 4 annoying words: card subject to change. This also comes from a time where pro wrestling just saw 2 big guys and decided, well, that's definitely going to draw. And hey, look, I would have watched it, but if you have a gimmick called a stretcher match and the person that loses doesn't leave on a stretcher, well, what the flub are we even doing? I mean, WCW also had no DQ matches that ended in disqualification, so maybe we're the fools, because some of us, myself included, watched all the way to the end. Also, I have a much better idea. Why the flub didn't they just do a loser leaves town match? Number 14, Lex Luger is a mind reader. Though yes, we're already at WCW in the year 2000, which in many ways could be the worst 12 months for any wrestling promotion ever, at least when it comes to the creative. It was the 15th of May episode of Nitro when fans arrived for the show to see a steel cage dangling high above the ring. That was nothing new for the company because they loved a steel cage. Sometimes they called them standard steel cage matches, sometimes they were called cage heat, and at other times they were called House of Pain. Don't worry if you're crying into your cereal, I am doing the same. You'd have to imagine that the audience figured this would be for the main event, but no. Instead, in the very first match, Sting wrestled Vampiro in the cage. Then later, Vince Russo cornered Miss Elizabeth inside the thing and threatened to have Medusa kick lumps out of her if she didn't do what she was told. Then Lex Luger dropped in to the top of the cage to put a stop to Vince's plans, but just let that run through your brain for 1 second. This was meant to be an impromptu moment, so how the flub did Lex know about this in advance? Because he would have had to dress up as a member of the ring crew, which is what he did here, just in case Vince Russo was planning to corner Liz, who at the time he was quite friendly with. And that is an absolute absurd decision process to go through. And why did none of his buddies say to Luger, dude, this is probably not going to happen. Why don't you just have some more chicken? Just because WCW had no ideas, they also booked handicap matches on this episode of Nitro and an ambulance match pitting Kevin Nash between Mike Awesome. We also had a world title change, because that's the way to get more people in. Let's take all of our ideas and get them done in 2 hours. Lex Luger wins though because he red binds. Number 13, Abdullah the Butcher is electrocuted. So pro wrestling has booked a number of stupid on-screen kayfabe deaths over the years, and actually TNA and Lucha Underground are in for the winner of that crown. When they got it right, I tell you, it was laugh out loud funny in the best possible way. The opposite to this would be killing Vince McMahon's TV character on Raw in 2007, and that one was embarrassing and incredibly ill-timed. Before all of this though, we go to WCW's Halloween Havoc 1991 pay-per-view, where the show opener was the Chamber of Horrors match. You've likely heard about this, because it often features on matches that are considered garbage. It also saw Sting, the Steiner Brothers, and El Gigante beat Cactus Jack, Big Van Vader, Abdullah the Butcher, and the Diamond Stud. And listen, whoever did get defeated was going to have to be electrocuted and die. This isn't me saying that to you, that's what WCW said. Let's not forget, we had an entire card after this. Maybe it was just going to be one funeral. Sadly, pesky logic had to go and ruin all of this because the WCW cameras clearly showed that the on-off switch was set to on for most of the match. And therefore, if you had touched that chair, once again, you would have perished. Bless Cactus Jack as well, because he noticed this just before doing the finish, so he actually switched the switch to off. Good grief, do I love Mick Foley. The word has always been that Abdullah the Butcher didn't really want to do this, but went through with it anyway. And all I'm going to ask you to do is look at the image on the screen right now. That's literally as far as he went in order to convey that he had been electrocuted. And when you watch it in real time, kind of looks like he just fell asleep. And again, this was 1991, my friends. A good 4 or 5 years before the big boom, WCW was already ridiculous. Number 12, non-cruiserweights are the cruiserweight champions. So the main selling point of TNA's X Division upon when it launched is that you were going to see some of the best cruiserweight action you have ever seen in your life, but there's also no limits. Now already it was lightweight dudes as AJ Styles, Jerry and Loki and the Amazing Red absolutely put that belt on the map. But thankfully they didn't borrow what WCW had done, because come 1999, after Vince Russo and Ed Ferrara had entered the company, they decided, well, nobody cares about the Cruiserweight division, so let's make a joke of the title. Starrcade 1999 saw Medusa become the first female WCW Cruiserweight champion, and that would have been fine, but once again, you could just tell that WCW was leaning into this as a ha-ha-he-he. If only that had been the bottom of the barrel, though, because around about a year later, we decided to make Ed Ferrara, brand new WCW writer, the Cruiserweight champion. Although it wasn't Ed, it was his alter ego Oklahoma, who was a very offensive parody of Jim Ross. Ferrara also thought he would mock JR's Bell's palsy, and if you think that's funny, you can stop listening right now. I want nothing to do with it. He didn't even lose that belt because he just vacated the thing a few days later on Thunder, mostly because he was a coward. And if we are taking wrestling as real, why the flub with the WCW board agreed to this to begin with? Not trying to throw shade at Ed Ferrara here, but he ain't no cruiserweight. If nothing else, when you watch it, it is just awful and an insult to Rey Mysterio, Chris Jericho, Eddie Guerrero, Dean Malenko, and others who had gone out of their way to make that division mean something. Let's not pretend they weren't a massive draw when the main event scene was a mess. Everybody involved in this should be ashamed. Number 11, Ric Flair's elaborate Black Scorpion scheme. Who is the Black Scorpion was the question that Sting was asking and the audience as we headed into Starrcade 1990, because yes, we had booked a mystery figure to enter the ring. Now I will tell you right now that when WCW decided to do this, they had no end chapter, they had no finish, they had no idea who was going to be under this mask, and if you actually watch the Black Scorpion, he changes over time because different individuals were under the hood. If we focus on this pay-per-view though, every single fan under the sun realized, wait a minute, that dude is most definitely Ric Flair. That's because it was the Nature Boy, he had assumed the character. Shout out to Flair as well, because he thought this story was so stupid he didn't even try to hide his wrestling style, and he just went through all his signature moves. Nobody could have been confused. The World Championship Wrestling only did this because Ric Flair and Sting had such good chemistry, which you could actually see at the Great American Bash of 1990. That match is super awesome and absolutely baffling that this monstrosity would come a few months later. Also, you need to go and see the Black Scorpion's ring entrance and whatever else came along with that. We kind of treated it like he was from outer space. I guess the best way to sum it up would be to call it cheap. Somebody came up with an idea that they thought would be interesting and then never bothered to finish it. Number 10, Dustin Rhodes, Badmouth 7. Dustin Rhodes shocked the world by going all in on the controversial Goldust character in 1995. Hard to get across these days because so much has changed, but it was radically different for the WWF at the time. If they'd actually lent into it and pushed it the right way, it could have actually torn down boundaries. Instead, after a while, it became absolutely ludicrous, but that's a different video for a different day. By 1999, we'd moved all that to one side, and Dustin himself was struggling with personal issues that were affecting his in-ring career, so he left the WWF to return to WCW, which is where he'd been beforehand. He also wanted to try a brand new gimmick that he dubbed 7, which was essentially Goldust, but with a much more supernatural kick to it. It meant that we got weeks of creepy vignettes, and this was the first issue. I implore you, once you're done with this video, to Google that and watch it for yourself. I don't really know how to put this, but it made the fans go, why is 7 really interested in little kids? Let's just leave it there. Come the 8th of November 1999 Nitro, he was quite literally floating to the ring, which was interesting, and told us what he hoped to achieve in WCW. This is when it fell off the rails again, because Dustin Rhodes in this outfit said, I don't like the way I look, and I really just want to be myself. Turned out this was Vince Russo leaning into the whole work shoot nonsense, and my gosh do I hate that. It just became bottom of the barrel stuff. Now, actually, I would imagine that Dustin Rhodes felt the same way about this, and it was WCW creative that ruined it. But just imagine watching all of this build, at least being a little bit intrigued about what the character would be, and then them coming out and looking at you going, nah, we made a mistake. I mean, it was Emelina before Emelina, and even then it was bad. For goodness sake, if you're going to do something, just do it. Number 9, Hulk Hogan has superhuman vision. So if you are looking for something to watch today, I would go to Nitro on the 27th of March 2000 and get to the segment when Hulk Hogan sees the wall. It is genuinely hilarious. Because halfway through a Hulk promo, he realizes that somebody is looking at him when he drops the now infamous line, that's the wall, brother. It's the wall. Now, Mean Gene Oakland, who was in charge of this interview, looks completely baffled because he couldn't see the wall. The fans couldn't see the wall. Nobody could see the wall because the wall was probably around about 10,000 miles in the opposite direction, and the only way Hogan would have known is if somebody had told him beforehand. Even the poor WCW production team aren't able to find him with the cameras because he's just so flubbing far away hanging out on top of a building. It meant that when we finally saw the man, he just looked like a speck of dust. Like he's so far in the distance, I do not know what WCW was thinking. There is absolutely no way anybody could have spotted him. Hulk also sold this like the wall was about to come and give him a new haircut, but it also also begged the question, how do you know this is the wall, Mr. Hogan? Maybe it's your mother. I mean, there's literally no way to tell. You will not be shocked to hear that this feud was an absolute disaster and dropped in about a week anyway. But yeah, this is what WCW decided to do in the year 2000. Hulk Hogan versus The Wall. Don't want to be that guy, but a literal wall would have been better. Number 8, David Flair's skewed DNA test logic. The 9th of October 2000 Nitro took place in Australia, so that made it quite exciting. Back home in the USA, well, things weren't going very well. Fans in Brisbane were also excited to see World Championship Wrestling because the product rarely went there, and I can vouch for this too. In the same year, WCW came to the UK, and I was the most pumped up man ever. Halfway through the show, we did have a segment between David Flair and Stacy Keibler too, and this was absolutely ridiculous. It started when David hit the ring to demand that Stacy gave him a blood sample so they could take a TNA test. This was part of an ongoing storyline with Keibler, as everybody was trying to find out who the father of her unborn child was. Welcome to WCW, welcome to Vince Russo Wrestling. Of course, Vince himself was in the running to be the dad, as was Ric Flair. Let's not get into that. And thankfully, WCW didn't pull the trigger on either of those. Instead, it was announcer Mark Madden who interrupted this, and he was the only one that saw sense. Why are you asking Stacy Keibler for a DNA test? She's the mother. We know she's the mother, because she's the one holding the baby, so why the flub are we wasting present TV time? This went on forever as well, which probably left the Australian fans wondering why they spent their cash. And later on, Ric Flair and Mike also had a hardcore match. Once again, don't ask me why. I do not know. And this is the equivalent of the tutorial in Far Cry Blood Dragon. That whole thing is like, haha, we don't have a tutorial when it has a tutorial. And this thing here, WCW knew this was stupid, but they booked it anyway. Number 7, Sting is fast counted, but he's not. Starrcade 1997 was meant to be it. Sting had been hanging out for the Rastas for a year and absolutely terrified the NWO. Before at this pay-per-view he was going to get his main event against Hulk Hogan. He should have become the WCW champion, the New World Order should have broken up, and WCW should have moved on to round 2. Do you know how many of those things happened? Absolutely 0. It absolutely ruined a lot of love that people had for World Championship Wrestling because this was meant to be so obvious, and it began backstage when Hulk Hogan saw the real-life Steve Borden and said to Eric Bischoff, he doesn't look like he's into this, and he doesn't have a good tan, and therefore all the plans had to go out the window, or that doesn't work for me, brother. The decision was still made that Sting had to win the World Championship for obvious reasons, and that Nick Patrick would do a fast count so at least Hulk Hogan got a visual pinfall. It's utterly ridiculous, but welcome to wrestling, when magically after the fact Nick said, no, that's not the case, Hulk Hogan came to me and said we're not doing the fast count anymore, meaning when he did go down to make this cover, we just got a regular count, but given that the story was a fast count, everybody around this match had to act surprised. I mean, it was absolute garbage. It's also basically when Bret Hart made his debut because he came down to say, that was a fast count, we need to start the match again. And have a guess what everybody in the venue was thinking. It wasn't a fast count, Bret. What the flub are you doing? And yes, moments after this, Sting did win the WCW title, but it meant nothing because the damage had been done. Don't want to be that guy, but quite clear that was Hogan's plan as well. Nobody that wanted to make Sting would have gone to these lengths. It was utterly ludicrous. I mean, everybody knew the one job was make Sting look unstoppable because he looked unstoppable for a year. And by the end of it, he was like a cat. So that means I just don't think a cat could win a professional wrestling match. Number 6, it's not hot. So this one is absolutely awesome and came when Hulk Hogan was feuding with the Dungeon of Doom. And I actually saw this clip on social media the other day, so it is out there. And it all comes down to a moment when Hulk Hogan decided to touch a fountain. WCW was nuts. The Dungeon of Doom in 1995 had also said they were now the alliance to end Hulkamania, which you can easily work out, but it genuinely is unintentional comedy at its finest. They also had superpowers, so they somehow teleported Hogan into this weird layer domain thingamajig, where he spewed nonsensical lines such as, there are no Hulkamaniacs here, I've never been him before, and when he did see this fountain, he touched it and said, it's not hot, as if any time he'd ever touched water, it was hot. I mean, I have so many questions and they've never been answered. You also had Kevin Sullivan and the Master giggling like school children, absolutely perplexed that they had made the biggest star of the 1980s do this. And once again, they had told us they were going to kill Hulk, and then they were going tee-hee-ha-ha. Of course, it was all totally bonkers and probably was looking over what the WWF was doing and decided they need to be more cartoony, which is the last thing the fans wanted. They just wanted WCW to be WCW. Make sure you watch the cage match that came after this too. My gosh, just when you think it can't get any worse, well, WCW found a new flaw. Number 5, the announcers are hyped for brand new writers. So let's say that I'm some hotshot writer and that the WWE picks me up tomorrow. Now, no, I'm not this. I'm an absolute idiot. We don't need to debate that. But can you imagine tuning into Raw and Michael Cole telling you, wow, we've just hired this brand new creative writer who's really going to help our storylines, and his name is Simon Miller? I mean, you may as well look down the lens and go, ha ha, wrestling is totally fake. Of course, on the 18th of October 1999 Nitro, poor Tony Schiavone and Bobby the Brain Heenan were meant to do this because, yep, Vince Russo and Ed Ferrara had arrived to save WCW's product, and even though they'd said they wanted a little hoopla, amazingly, we had to promote them on TV. They even got a script that read, almost word for word, look, we know Nitro and Thunder have been a little worse for wear in 1999, but now the guys responsible for Raw's success are on our team, so things will definitely turn around soon. So even before they had put pen to paper, the whole message was, do not believe in what you're seeing, it's just a bunch of stupid storylines. It's also incredibly big-headed. There's no two ways to talk about it, because the best writers do not get heard about, because they're just writing stories. I've now said that 3 times. It's why I would never get mad at WWE doing the Unreal series, because 1, kayfabe is broken anyway, and 2, if this is the way they want to talk about it, excellent, it's a unique show you can totally ignore. I guess the only thing you could compare it to is like you were watching a movie, and halfway through Brad Pitt paused it to tell you how the whole thing came together. Sounds ridiculous, right? That's because it would be. Number 4, the Giant's big fall. So in 1995, when Paul White, then known as the Giant, walked into WCW, people got damn excited because he was massive and he could move. The promotion also had the idea to tell the fans that he was Andre the Giant's son, but that quickly faded away because nobody was going to believe it. Nothing will be as surreal as what went down at Halloween Havoc 1995, however, because there, the Giant survived a fall off the top of a nearby building and wrestled in the main event on the same night. I guess he must be immortal, he's Highlander. There's so much to explain here because WCW, but they were promoting a monster truck battle between vehicles, one that was going to represent Hulk Hogan and the other that would represent the Giant. It took place atop the nearby Cobo Hall, and it was Hogan's truck that took the W. And if you didn't laugh at that, you can't know the history. The Giant was so damn mad he started feuding with Hulk, maybe he had a bet on, and yes, that is when Paul White fell to his doom off a flipping building, and then turned up an hour later to work a 15-minute WCW World title bout. Of course, he won that by disqualification, but listen, by this stage, at least he won. Hulk Hogan wouldn't even lose the monster truck battle. That kind of sums it up. And did WCW ever explain to us how he was able to survive this? I'll give you 3 seconds. 3, 2, 1. No, they did not. Number 3, Goldberg won't take his scripted move. So this, as far as I'm concerned, is the worst moment within professional wrestling, real-life moments aside. It went down at the New Blood Rising 2000 pay-per-view, which is an absolute abomination of a show, and saw a match between Goldberg, Kevin Nash, and Scott Steiner go completely off the rails. This is because halfway through, Kevin Nash was going to powerbomb Goldberg. Bill decided he didn't want to do that. He stormed off when he bumped into Vince Russo at the top of the stage, where he said to Vince, I am not going to follow your script. I do not want to do this. The commentators also doubled down and said, yep, that's Bill Goldberg not doing as he was instructed. What an unprofessional person. You should follow the script. You can't see it right now, but once again, I'm crying. They even went as far as to tell us that Nash was going to have to improvise the finish to this triple threat match. And I ask you the question, my friends, what was Vince Russo thinking and who was this for? We use wrestling as a distraction to all of our problems, so we pretend that it's real. That's half the flipping fun. It didn't work either because so many people tuned off after this and basically decided never to buy a WCW pay-per-view again because they felt like their intelligence had been insulted. You can imagine the commentary team didn't like this either because they were basically made of old school bones. And finally, how was this meant to draw TV ratings? Who was going to tune in going, well, I wonder if Goldberg follows the script tonight? Please forgive my language, kids, but it was shite. Number 2, the blood misses Kevin Nash. So Kevin Nash has talked about this today and he always laughs his ass off, which makes it way more entertaining. But given everything that was happening with WCW around this, well, it just felt like another kick in the shins. It was also around the same time that WWF had started doing the bloodbath gimmick with Gangrel and the Brood. So as always, WCW decided, well, we'll do it from the ceiling as well, and we shall drop fake blood onto people. And even saying that out loud sounds absolutely insane. It meant numerous episodes of Nitro and Thunder throughout the same second half of 2000 had this going down, and of course they would hit various wrestlers. For some reason, it also made these individuals fall on the floor. They were about to die. I guess wrestling blood is more powerful than normal blood. You'd think they would have stopped doing this after WCW's production team actually started missing wrestlers, but nope, they continued to do it, and they continued to miss. Russo and his new blood stable also tried this on Kevin Nash several times, and yes, this goes back to what we just talked about. Kevin Nash wouldn't move, and the blood would miss him by about 2 feet. He would then start laughing because Kevin Nash is the best. It also meant the poor people that did get covered in the red stuff were the front row, although I'd imagine they probably enjoyed that. And yes, somebody then had to run in and clean this off the mat, as the wrestler in question skipped away like nothing had happened, and that's because it didn't. To make matters even more OTT, if you weren't in the main event scene and the blood missed, you were still told to sell it like it was skin melting acid. Oh, actually, I found this one very funny, but it was also really, really dumb. Number 1, Hulk Hogan can see the Ultimate Warrior. So we talk about this a lot on Ups and Downs, and it is actually a logic faux pas that wrestling still falls into, but nothing will be worse than this, mostly because the Hulk Hogan vs. the Ultimate Warrior in 1998 was absolutely dreadful. It was on the 5th of October 1998 Nitro, and yes, during that episode, Hulk Hogan totally freaked out because he looked in the mirror, and who did he see staring back at him? It was the Ultimate Warrior. Eric Bischoff was there too, and he started saying, "Hulk, what's wrong with you? I can't see what you're seeing." But you know who could see? Us, the fans. Because the Ultimate Warrior was being broadcast on the Mirror 4 television, so actually, if you were going to talk about bonkers people, there was only one individual, and his name was Eric Bischoff. It was just one of those things that WCW came up with in about 8 seconds and never actually took an extra minute to go, should we be doing this? And actually, all of the Ultimate Warrior's tricks would come back to bite WCW too. Everybody as always says that Davey Boy Smith was seriously injured when he landed on a trapdoor that, yes, was reserved for a Warrior entrance later in the night. Do not forget as well that soon after that Halloween Havoc match, the Ultimate Warrior just disappeared, and if you don't know, the only reason this was signed to begin with is because Hulk wanted his WrestleMania win back. It was an absolute disaster, but actually now that WCW has been dead for almost 3 decades, I would tell you to go and watch it, especially the match. It is laugh out loud funny. It does not go well at all.
From messy and baffling title pictures to a certain Cody-Verse that was even more bizarre than you remember. I am Gareth, this is What Culture Wrestling, and here are 12 exact moments AEW booking stopped making sense. Number 12, the interim AEW World Title picture, June 1st, 2022. On the June 1st, 2022 Dynamite, new AEW World Champion CM Punk was scheduled to wrestle Max Caster and the Guns alongside FTR. He just about gutted it through what was meant to be a low-stakes celebratory affair. It is rather infamous in retrospect. Punk shattered his foot and the complexion of the company by first jumping into the crowd. Silly Philly. He vacated the belt on the subsequent edition of Rampage, but because Tony Khan wanted to strap Punk back up as soon as was practicable, he created an interim world title, and this idea was disastrous. So firstly, it seemed to annoy the guy who got it, Jon Moxley, because it cast him as inferior to and a placeholder for CM Punk, resulting in an infamous program teeming with political tension. This didn't do much for Mox. Even though he was one of the absolute best wrestlers in the world, it portrayed him as solid, reliable, dependable, words you don't tend to associate with genuine superstars. The process of arriving at Mox was also quite baffling. Ahead of Forbidden Door, at which Mox represented AEW against New Japan Pro Wrestling's Hiroshi Tanahashi, Khan booked a battle royal to determine Mox's opponent for the #1 contender spot. And that man was Kyle O'Reilly, who outlasted top stars such as Bobby Fish and John Silver en route to victory. Missing from that match was Hangman Page, who didn't get the chance to win his belt back, and Wardlow, who was white hot following his awesome rampage to avenge MJF between March and May. How do you not include those two in that match? Well, Wardlow was actually scripted to bury the idea of the interim title to explain why he wasn't in the match. What? Look, as great as Mox definitely was throughout 2022, this business stigmatized him as a safe pair of hands. It fueled CM Punk's top star entitlement, undermined Wardlow as a major prospect worth investing in, and diminished the value of the world title. Yeah, not good business. Number 11, Bryan Danielson's world title reign. Something clearly happened during Bryan Danielson's AEW world title reign that wasn't communicated. The easy, if perhaps unfair, inference is that he was far more banged up than he and AEW anticipated when the decision was made to plot his world title run last stand. Darby Allin had become #1 contender by winning a Royal Rampage Battle Royal, and was indeed meant to dethrone Bryan Danielson in a Seattle Derby Wrestle Dream. Could you imagine? He was made to look like an idiot when the booking plans changed though. It was thought a better idea for a heel Moxley to dethrone Bryan and later drop the belt to Darby. So Darby put his shot on the line against Mox at Grand Slam and lost. This weird shift also wasn't helped by Mox's experiments with cryptic Malachi Black style promos. In the meantime, Christian Cage won a casino gauntlet match all in London, securing essentially a Money in the Bank contract. Wait, didn't AEW think WWE was bad? Surely the idea wasn't for him to cash in on fellow heel Jon Moxley. He was either going to ruin Darby's big moment, or fail in the pursuit when challenging Danielson. Perhaps when Luchasaurus had finally tired of his bullying. Yeah, that would have made more sense. Luchasaurus was suffering terribly unfortunate health issues at the time, so if that was the plan, clearly AEW could not proceed. In another odd development, Nigel McGuinness and his return from injury, a great story that AEW didn't even need to write, was complicated by Nigel's insistence that Bryan was a coward who might not even make it to Grand Slam. That match right there was a worthy last chapter that didn't need any bogus episodic TV crap to build. Now yes, it did make narrative sense for Bryan to work Jack Perry, who had been favoured in the booking, but I mean, who really asked for that? No, you didn't. Here and thereafter, AEW's booking fell off a gorge, was airlifted back up, struck a tree, and then went back down again. Now for a touch of positivity, eh? What's your favourite Bryan Danielson moment in AEW? Was it his big world title win at All In? Was it something else? You let me know in the comments down below. Yes! Number 10, the early days of the Death Riders, October 30th, 2024. The Death Riders stable ultimately was a major success. In this era that we're living in, the booking draws more heat than any fictional heel. The idea of Hangman Page finally putting a stop to hokey crime sprees and relentless heat angles drove the smash success of All In Texas. It also helps and should not go unmentioned that Jon Moxley finally realized his potential as a top heel with a couple of months to spare. We got there in the end. Bad and/or repetitive booking with a great payoff is the new long-term storytelling, folks. Initially, the stable was abysmal and nonsensical. Here's an example for you, one that thwarted the early promise of an overarching, interconnected plot designed to restore the feeling. Remember that? Jon Moxley broke Zay's hand because he was disgusted that the Private Party member had stagnated in the same spot. Zay was everything wrong with AEW, a company that itself was languishing. Zay, together with Mark Quinn, very quickly, too quickly you could say, dethroned World Tag Team Champions, the Young Bucks. Surely Private Party should have cut a promo on the Death Riders telling them that they had not forgotten about Mox's violent attack. They should have asked the Death Riders to call them stagnant now. Private Party should have then feuded with Claudio Castagnoli and Wheeler Yuta over the belts. But nope, this thread was just dropped. Instead, the two squads simply ignored one another. Okay. Daniel Garcia, another early defender of AEW, won the TNT title and then did not do a great deal with it. Shouldn't this have drawn the ire of Pac? Shouldn't Garcia have asked Pac, who in his mind was superior to anybody else in AEW, where his singles title was? It was as if Private Party and Daniel Garcia just skulked away, defending their titles in random matches. And neither reign, unsurprisingly, was particularly good. This was haphazard in the extreme. Nothing fit together at all. Number 9, CM Punk's Collision, June 17th, 2023. CM Punk's Collision is a strange thing to hold nostalgia for. It only happened 2 years ago, for one, and, well, was it that good? It was refreshing, sure. A welcome shift from the often frenzied, numbing pace of Dynamite, on which too many angles are not registered for long enough. But how good was it really? Beyond the overlong main event matches, the storytelling was a bit baffling. One long, unkept promise. CM Punk unveiled an AEW World title with a spray-painted X on it, proclaiming himself to be the real world champion. Naturally, fans expected a unification match against recognized world champion MJF. This, astonishingly, was never formalized nor even planned. So why did Punk, who asserted a degree of creative control, do this? It was difficult to interpret as anything other than a political power play, which, factoring in the rumors of certain talents being banned from the building, might sum up CM Punk's collision generally. Why, oh why, did Tony Khan approve it? You don't tease or hint at matches that you have no intention of delivering. Like, that's the first rule of promotion. They can't just expect everybody to magically get along. Now, that might sound snarky, yeah, but honestly, it's not untrue. Khan booked his show in the summer of 2023 with total naivety. It was almost cruel to his fanbase, but eventually, at least until 2025, scorned fans just taught themselves not to get excited, which is a bit sad. Cloaked by a darkened cloud the entire time, a happy ending to the unresolved CM Punk versus the Elite feud was never remotely likely, was it? The early days of Collision were beyond untenable. It was a source of anxiety, not escapism. Number 8, the TNT title picture, April 27th, 2022. Eddie Kingston should have dethroned TNT champion Miro at All Out 2021. Kingston was the rarest of wrestlers in the modern scene. All soul, a living folk hero, and his output that year was phenomenal. Tony Khan instead gave the nod to Sammy Guevara, who defeated the Redeemer on the September 29th Dynamite. Now, this was an understandable decision and noble failure. Guevara was a day one project who, for a time, was very over as a charismatic, obnoxious heel. The TNT title was both his reward and an instruction to the fans that if they connect with a wrestler, that wrestler's career will progress. In other words, your long-term investment actually matters. What a world. If the Guevara push was a justified tactic, the Scorpio Sky push was just irritating. Guevara, in his second reign, dropped the belt to Sky on the March 9th, 2022 Dynamite. Guevara won it for the third time proper at Battle of the Belts on April 15th. Look, the idea of one Scorpio Sky reign was inexplicable enough, since he was a mere solid hand in the mid-card scene, whose work never really approached best match in AEW history level. He then embarked on his second after winning back the title on April 27th, before then dropping it to Wardlow on July 6th. This was all kinds of awful, folks. Sky was a barely over heel whom Khan saw more in than most. Guevara, an increasingly unlikable babyface. Nobody wanted either man to reign with a belt that lost its prestige at an alarming rate. A blur of hot potato nothingness with minimal fan interest. The what are we doing here of it all was compounded by the fact that AEW's roster of 2022 was teeming with countless better options. Tony Khan is a patient, loyal booker, but this was idiotically stubborn business. Number 7, the Full Gear 2023 Show Long Angle, November 18th, 2023. There is a lot to unpack here, my friends. MJF and Adam Cole became friends in the late spring of 2023. They formed the skit-loving team Better Than You, baby! The most succinct way of describing which is just about entertaining and charming enough to get away with itself. Yeah, that was the peak. The decline was astonishingly bad. Adam Cole shattered his ankle at Grand Slam in September 23, which somehow didn't necessitate a TV write-off. The injury was so bad that Cole ended up missing over a year of action. The injury was so bad and complex that a dead man's bone was inserted into his foot via experimental surgery. Yeah, that's bad. AEW was, and is, meant to be the vaguely sports-oriented promotion in the US mainstream. At a minimum, its world should make sense in the context of a sport. Typically, football players with destroyed legs are not allowed to enter the field, right? On the Full Gear pre-show, MJF was attacked by the Guns, and in a hook was sent away in an ambulance. With his knee in agony, he could not defend his title against Jay White. So, who stepped up? The even more injured Adam Cole. Yep, the even more injured Adam Cole, who A, was even more injured than MJF, B, under no circumstances would ever get cleared to compete by a conscientious, fit-for-purpose medical team, and C, was plotting to betray MJF, and had no idea that MJF would make his heroic return just in time for the main event. Illogical barely captures how overthought this whole thing was. And that wasn't even the worst of it, but oh boy, we will get there, right after I remind your lovely face to hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. You'll get so many more fantastic What Culture Wrestling lists, series, news videos, and more. It just makes sense, unlike some of these pieces of AEW booking. Right, back to it we go. Number 6, The Devil storyline. September 27th, 2023. Adding to the previous entry on Full Gear, in September 2023, Jay White was attacked by several mysterious figures. One was wearing the devil mask worn by MJF at All Out 2022. It was implied that this must have been MJF, but it was very obviously a red herring. Jay himself didn't even seem that bothered, to be honest. Few were, really. A couple of characters accused MJF of being the devil, Roderick Strong most notably and most obnoxiously, but MJF was adamant that he absolutely was not. This saga was just horrendous. The hokiest tripe that AEW ever served up at such a prominent level. It utterly killed MJF as a babyface. People gravitated towards him because he was an entertaining a-hole. They didn't care about those old evil deeds catching up to him. Hell, they would have preferred to see him do more of them than this. At one point, this was a Vince Russo-sized disgrace to the idea of a sports-oriented, high-quality wrestling league. The storyline was all over the place narratively, since the only person to care about it for a month of inactivity was Roddy. And the logic was equally dismal. The devil was able to hack into the mainframe to deliver his glitchy messages, and even put on a dazzling lights display when his masked men made their entrance for matches, in which their opponents never immediately removed their disguise. Right. This was dumb and goofy at the time, and was somehow worse when the perp was revealed to be Adam Cole Bebe at World's End. Cole, the devil, plotted to betray MJF and distracted him from the master plan when at Roddy Strong's place, pulling slow-motion happy faces while making sandwiches and riding around on mobility scooters. Yeah. I mean, positively satanic stuff here. Number 5, the Cody-Verse, November 13th, 2021. Cody Rhodes was savvy and bold enough to realize that by late 2021, he had effectively been sidelined to accommodate CM Punk and Bryan Danielson. Mired in the upper mid-card, and through his own decision-making, unable to vie for the world title, there was nowhere to go but out. The widely derided Cody-Verse booking was the first sign that there was nothing of purpose for him to really do. He traded wins with Malachi Black over the summer, as Tony Khan bottled jobbing out his rapidly expanding roster. And the exact same thing happened with Andrade El Idolo too. In truth, this is less stopped making sense and more political booking with zero drama, until the bizarre events of November 2021. At Full Gear, a perma-bleeding Cody teamed with Pac to defeat Malachi and Andrade in a weird tweener-tinged match. Pac teaming with Cody made sense. They were locked in singles feuds with their opponents on the night, but what drew Malachi and Andrade together? Well, as alluded to on screen, Malachi was married in real life to Andrade's fictional valet in WWE. That was cute insider knowledge masquerading as a story, really. Then at some point, after inexplicably waiting well over a year, FTR decided they wanted to attack Cody for saying F the Revival on Being the Elite several years prior. This led to an 8-man tag on the November 24th Dynamite. FTR, Andrade, and Malachi defeated Cody Rhodes and his loyal, trusted friends, Death Triangle. MJF loaned his Pinnacle stablemates to make this deal happen. You know, just in case this storyline was missing yet more extraneous detail. Convoluted and just very wasteful. WWE's far simpler approach won out with Cody Rhodes. Number 4, Don Callis tries to recruit Chris Jericho, August 16th, 2023. Chris Jericho, AEW had an idea for the inaugural All In London in 2023. It just so happened that Jericho got a match bound for a cauldron atmosphere and critical acclaim against the best in-ring wrestler in the world, Will Ospreay. Fancy that. But the process of getting there and slowly turning Jericho babyface was so convoluted that he instead turned even more heel. Moreover, the very idea was dumb before the botched execution. Most fans would rather Jericho have gone away for a while rather than received him as a hero. Don Callis, Ospreay's manager, tried to persuade Jericho not to retire, itself an unconvincing storyline tease. They held secret meetings in a bid to hash out an alliance. Eventually, Jericho, spurning his Jericho Appreciation Society stablemates, made the decision to align with the heel Don Callis. Callis, expecting a rejection, had actually intended to betray Jericho, as an oil painting uncovered by Jericho revealed. Why then did Callis make such an effort in the first place? To recap, Jericho teased turning babyface by appealing to the crowd, asking them to believe that he was still good enough. The Callis betrayal was meant to pile the sympathy on Jericho, turning him face. But Jericho had seconds earlier made the decision to continue his cheating ways with Don's help. All of this happened ahead of a match against the Essex, England-born Ospreay, who was going to draw the majority of cheers at Wembley regardless. Now, in AEW's defense, they had existing continuity to worry about. Ospreay and Callis were presented as heels in Canada at Forbidden Door in June, so booking him in London 2 months later was always going to require some careful thought. This was overthought to a stupid extent in the end. But Jericho got his 4 3/4 star rating from The Observer, so who cares, eh? Me, I cared. Number 3, the Blackpool Combat Club. General. August 23rd, 2023. The Blackpool Combat Club seemed like a winning idea. Bryan Danielson and Jon Moxley drafting in Wheeler Yuta and perhaps others to reshape AEW in their own violent image while continuing to escalate their now very bloody, stiff matches before inevitably feuding with and elevating their proteges. Oh, it sounds great. No, not great actually. It was more an identity, a lifestyle than a faction. Or less generously, an excuse for Mox and Danielson to just indulge their tough guy leanings. When they actually did engage in stable warfare, the results were underwhelming. They feuded over concepts in emotionless sagas. They defended the art of wrestling against the evils of sports entertainment versus the Jericho Appreciation Society in 2022, which, without any believable hatred, just dragged on and on against the Elite a year later. There was lots of vague, unengaging chat about professionalism amid the usual anarchy in the arena and blood and guts faction feud template. Mox barely cut promos throughout this run too, preferring instead to mow down mid-card opposition in increasingly random and pointless matches. This moody tweener role made for such bland television. This was a foolish use of the great man, and things got plain dumb narratively the longer it went on. By August 2023, with CM Punk's exit causing several migraines, the BCC played heels against career rivals, best friends, and the Lucha Brothers, as Danielson played face against Ricky Starks at the exact same time. The matches were outstanding, yes, but the booking made zero sense. Everything the grifters spout about AEW was sadly true during that dumbass summer of 2023. Big sigh. Number 2, the Babyface Super Team device, June 28th, 2023. It used to be that AEW's hold on alliances was very tight and logical. If you had a loyal friend, they would back you up in a fight. If that friendship was strained, they might be reluctant to help. This was so well observed in the early days of Dynamite that the decision whether or not to back up a fellow babyface was a key phase in a wrestler's character development. Hangman Page specialized in making these decisions. AEW installed a much-needed rule, exercising a promotional advantage over Vince McMahon's WWE. Babyfaces should have friends. Eventually, though, this frittered away. The conglomeration, which for a time was very charming, granted, accelerated a certain booking crutch. The Babyface Super Team, a good early example of which unfolded on the June 28, 2023 Dynamite. That summer again. Orange Cassidy, El Hijo del Vikingo, and Keith Lee defeated Daniel Garcia, Daddy Magic, and Cool Hand Ange. As many of these matches are, it was loads of fun in and of itself. But Tony Khan subsequently became fixated on this type of match. Wholesome, strange bedfellows babyfaces defeating a team of heels. This quirk is a cool novelty for live crowds, and a neat way of adding levity to the TV show in the mid-card. But what does it truly achieve? Very little. And what's more, when the time comes for a babyface to get saved, their new pals desert them. Orange Cassidy made dozens of friends in these sorts of matches throughout 2023, but they were nowhere to be found when he needed them the most. This vacuum business adds up to a whole load of nothing. AEW never feels quite as empty and trivial as when Khan books this kind of stuff for no real purpose. Like, how many of these matches do you actually remember? Not many, I bet. Number 1, the death of the ranking system, April 2024. It used to work, and it used to be bloody great. Remember when Darby Allin was on the rise in the early days? Simply seeing his face near the top of the rankings graphic was a visual hint as to how close he was to making it. Hangman Page hovering near the top only to get displaced was a clever device the fans were told to worry about, but never give up on him. Now, with no fixed narrative structure in place, the idea and value of contendership is under constant, deserved scrutiny. Now broadly, AEW gets it right more often than not. Consider the Hangman Page comeback of 2025. He won the Owen Hart Cup, was protected in the booking elsewhere, and won a major match against MJF at Revolution. He was built brilliantly and with conviction as the world champion-elect. There is no flawless, wholly logical method to booking pro wrestling and determining who is positioned where. Indeed, the rankings wasn't that either. But the dismantling of the system has spawned far too many bad and nonsensical habits. Hologram embarked on a double figures winning streak without even challenging for the lowly TNT Championship. Everyone gets a shot at that. Challengers pin champions in a direct, potentially damaging WWE-style way far more than they did in 2019 and 2020, let me tell you. Toni Storm has taken pins from Megan Bayne and Athena this year in 2 examples of an accelerated development. And it's just as well Toni is too big a star for this to matter. Because Tony Khan has recruited too many star acts, wins and losses don't matter as much as they once did. FTR, who win a great deal on their beloved Collision, should have received infinity more tag title shots than they have over the years, and FTR even made a mockery of this quirk on TV in 2022. The Eliminator match has replaced the intricate map to the top, and it lacks any real heft. Who hasn't earned the chance to defeat a champion at this point? I think I did at some point, and I don't even work there.
TNA has a crazy past. People kept killing off the promotion, but here we are today, and they basically outlived WCW. Truly is a wonderful success story. Do not forget, though, the reasons fans predicted their demise is because on occasion, well, total non-stop action was borderline insane. Some of the stories and angles they tried, I mean, I respect it from a risk point of view. From a sense perspective, though, it's totally bonkers. So let's talk a walk down memory lane, and I am the bald a-hole Simon Miller, and yep, let's have a chat about the times TNA just didn't make any sense. Number 9, AJ is in trouble. Now remember this, AJ Styles is one of the best wrestlers ever. He changed the game, and without what he did, you may not get some of the matches we do get today. AJ Styles did it his way and it ruled. I'm not sure TNA ever truly understood this though, hence why they did things like this. You'll of course know the name instantly as it is infamous, Claire Lynch. Let me do my best here. It was 2012 and Christopher Daniels and Frankie Kazarian decided to go after AJ. They had discovered he may be having an affair with TNA boss Dixie Carter, and they weren't going to let this lie. It was done for cliffhanger TV, and therefore there was a twist. The pair were working together, but it was done to help Claire Lynch, or a mutual friend who had a drug addiction. Yep, this is wrestling. It's already too far gone because, as we've talked about before, I don't think promotions should be tackling this stuff, mostly because they always treat it with a sledgehammer and there's no nuance at all. Soon Claire, of course, joined the heels, as they now claim Styles had fathered her unborn child, and of course AJ said this wasn't true. Lynch by this point was just totally over the top, as TNA sort of, but not really, insinuated that maybe Daniels and Kaz were hooking her up on pills to make her more crazy, and yes, that's awful. Of course, it led to a match where if Styles won, he'd be free and clear, regardless whether this was true or not, and that's just ridiculous. It was so bad as well, the actress playing Claire quit because of the abuse fans aimed at her, so this sucked on screen and off. TNA didn't stop, however, and then invented lawyer Grace Steen to take her place, and the ending was the villains had to pay her off to make AJ look bad. So this should have finished with Styles having these two arrested, to be completely honest. Imagine you had done that in real life. None of it made any sense, which of course will be my catchphrase for this video when it was going down either. It was all over the place, and it didn't work. Some fans even stopped watching. Say it with me. Whoops. Number 8, Jay Lethal gets savaged. Black Machismo, which was Jay Lethal's Macho Man impersonation gimmick, should have been death. Imagine somebody walked out now and pretended to be John Cena, they would be roasted. Lethal was so damn good at this though, it worked and actually gave TNA a good character the fans wanted to see. Wrestling is meant to be fun, this was fun. It was always going to run its course because that's life, but when we started it, there was almost a legend killer type vibe to the whole thing. Jay would face the stars from yesteryear while pretending to be a star from yesteryear. It was pretty good. Until TNA got it the wrong way around. Because Jim Neidhart came in and beat Jay in seconds. Tatanka then did the same. So that's right, we didn't use this to establish that Lethal was great. We made him so much of a joke. Old heroes were winning matches, and then we were never using them again. Of course, that ended all of this way too soon, because we told fans, you don't need to overly buy in. Jay had to repackage himself by essentially doing the same thing with Ric Flair, which did give birth to that one segment with the Nature Boy, but really overall it wasn't the same. The Macho Man impression actually seemed to have some legs, so TNA cut them right off, which was baffling. It should have been the promotion to let weird things go, be the alternative for goodness sake. They didn't. Number 7, Desmond Wolfe wins over the fans, and basically got in trouble for it. That did happen a lot, or so it felt like. Desmond Wolfe was Nigel McGuinness, in case you don't know, and this tied in. TNA could try mad things if they wanted because they were the challenger brand. They wanted to make noise, and as such, they weren't going to be held to the same standard. Any sort of buzz usually could work in their favor. Management, of course, would embrace this here and there, as they did with fan voting. Literally tell us who you would like to see more of and we can see what we can do. Then Desmond won one of these polls, and I assume TNA wasn't expecting that, so it looked like they took it all out on Wolfe. That is insane. Let me make it clear too, Kurt Angle was in this poll, Jeff Hardy was in this poll, and the winner was going to face Rob Van Dam for a title shot, and when Wolfe did come out on top, we just put this on TV, and we had RVD win. The television aspect of all that matters as well. If Angle had won, you just know this would have been on pay-per-view, because of course it should have been. So it was outwardly rejecting fan feedback, and even if it hadn't have worked long-term, it was worth a try for goodness sake. TNA needed new stars, and Nigel McGuinness in general was much loved due to his overall journey. We just squandered it. Please somebody make it make sense. Number 6, Monty Brown turns heel. Monty Brown was so over in TNA within months, there was talk of him going to WWE, and you can't sell a man better than that. He was lightning in a bottle and fans loved this dude. He was a proper new star as well, so Total Non-Stop Action actually did it. In 2004, he had the move too, as the pounce felt like the next version of the spear. You stood there and waited when boom, wrecked someone. Don't forget this was only a couple of years into the promotion being alive too, so Brown felt like he could be the guy. So of course we turned him heel in 2005 for goodness sake. It was at the end of Destination X where Monty joined Jeff Jarrett in a shock move, and this was maddening because only a month before all this, Double J had destroyed Brown with guitar shots and low blows to beat him. That was dumb because it was time to pull the trigger, but to then just have Brown team up with Jeff, it felt so bad, so uninformed. If you want to tell me Vince Russo was behind this, I wouldn't be surprised. We got to do a shock just to do a shock. All the momentum went away because, of course, now he was an underling, and TNA was telling you he was number 2 to Jarrett. But we wanted him to be number 1. This was dropping the ball. It was so damn stupid. Number 5, the rise of D'Angelo De Niro. At one point in time, a wrestler would leave WWE and find a new lease of life elsewhere. Obviously, when WCW were around, this was huge, and people assumed it was going to be the same with TNA. Not quite. They seem to have a knack for taking somebody's potential and making them feel like just another guy in a matter of weeks, usually due to the old guard, to be fair. They didn't want to give up their spot. It even gave birth to a meme, because how many times have you seen what is so-and-so doing in the Impact Zone? And the once Elijah Burke also went on this journey. D'Angelo De Niro had tested out his Pope character in WWE before getting released, and after a short spell of tweaking it on the indie scene, he did debut in TNA to show it off proper. I tell you, he smashed it and got over in a couple of weeks. When the promotion toured the UK, he was so popular he even main evented some shows when it all hit a wall. And why? Hulk Hogan and Eric Bischoff. Because as soon as they signed on, it was a big reset for all talent and the Pope suffered bad. For whatever reason, they didn't fancy him, even if crowd reactions were telling them otherwise. That was the major issue with the regime. They sort of just pushed their buddies. D'Angelo did get a title shot against AJ Styles, which he lost after Styles stabbed him with a pen. And yes, that is true. And nothing else really followed, as if De Niro was fine with this. Why wouldn't I be attacked by stationary? The top of the mountain for him never returned overall, which didn't do much for morale either. It sent a bad message around the locker room. Even if you do get over, well, that may not be enough. Number 4, Dixie Carter shoots on the roster. What on earth was this? It came just as Dixie Carter had hired Hogan and Bischoff, which made it worse, because Dixie had made these decisions, and now the other wrestlers were about to get it in the neck. The reason that ties in is because the rumors stated that Carter had told the roster to be super excited about this new dawn, when certain whispers suggested otherwise. Nobody was actually thrilled about this. It was the opposite of what TNA should be. All of that, I assume, got back to Dixie, which triggered this, because on television she gathered up the team and told them that they'll be fired unless they all get in line. No more nonsense, buck up or shut up. And yes, this was meant to be the start of the heel turn, because you just got to have the bad guy general manager. Unfortunately, this sucked, and it backfired because it wasn't good heat. It just annoyed the fans, because why are you yelling at the guys and girls who have made this company what it is? It was just so mismanaged, and I'm sure Hulk and Eric had something to do with it. They were so stuck in the Monday Night Wars, which is why Impact got moved in the first place. Gotta challenge WWE head on? No, you don't. Number 3, Bobby Roode doesn't win, and then he does win. So there is kind of a thread running through all of this and underlines one of TNA's biggest issues a decade or so ago, not going with new people and have the courage to see it through. It was 2011 though, and the Bound for Glory series tournament did a good job in telling you Bobby Roode could be the guy. TNA even did this without the usual cliche of turning him on tag team partner James Storm, and good, fans didn't want to see that. The entire summer was then dedicated to this when we found out then champion Kurt Angle needed surgery. And there you go. It sucks, but now we can give Bobby a shot. And it certainly seemed like this was the plan until Hulk Hogan went on the radio. And this, my friends, is a genuine quote. Nah, he's not ready. He's not the next guy. You know, they might think he is. Dixie Carter might think he is. The whole world might think he is. He is not the next guy. I have a very strong feeling Kurt Angle's going to clean his clock performance-wise and carry the match and basically remain the champion. Surprise, surprise, Roode then did lose when Storm defeated Angle, who then got screwed himself because Roode did go heel when he turned on his friend. So it was the exact opposite of the story the audience wanted. Just have Bobby win the first one, for goodness sake. It was the simplest layup ever. That was actually secondary to what Hogan had said though, because it showed it wasn't unto the kayfabe. He meant this, so imagine what that said to the rest of the roster. They probably just went shrug emoji. I don't mean to be horrible, but what an idiot. Number 2, Hogan does it again. Sort of. There is a connection here, as after the 4th of January 2010 Impact, which was meant to be TNA's big coming out party, one man of course took center stage, and it was Hulk Hogan. It was quite funny as we got a production mistake straight away as we saw Hulk talking to people in the back, and then he arrived at the arena later. So that was the wrong way around. We know you're there, Hulk. We've seen you. That confusion continued as well because we soon did a split. And what I mean by that is that friend Eric Bischoff seemed excited to help out the bad guys on the roster, whereas Hogan was all about the young dudes. We then had a big question to answer. Whose side is he on? We were doing it again. Scott Hall, Kevin Nash, and Sean Waltman were all presented as individuals ready to abuse their relationship with their former friend. And Hogan did ignore their bad guy antics, but yelled at Jeff Jarrett, who was a babyface at the time. Hulk felt like he was responsible for the company failing. That is literally what he said. And once again, do not forget that Hulk was a good guy too. Of course, that ended with Double J and Hogan being in cahoots because we have to have swerves, bro. It also meant we were about to retread the NWO in 2010. So no wonder that didn't work. People did not want TNA to be WWE, but I tell you, they absolutely didn't want it to be WCW. Mission failed. Number 1, this booking sucks. The first ever broadcast of TNA sort of underlined the madness that was coming. The ring broke during the pre-show, which was nobody's fault, but this may have been an omen, especially given how we followed up on this. As we had to reset the thing before the main pay-per-view, Mike Tenay went on hosting duties to welcome some legends who were in attendance. Harley Race, Dory Funk Jr. and Ricky Steamboat were all there, and while the fans liked this, co-commentator Ed Ferrara tried to ruin it because he just wanted to scream about T and A. Take note of the and there as well. It tells you what he was doing. The crowd popped big when Steamboat was announced as the special guest referee for the main event too, because they love this guy. Of course they did, he's an all-timer. It then went nuts as Jeff Jarrett interrupted and actually said this stipulation sucked. Now, I guess he can get away with it because he was the heel, but surely the focus should have been on Ricky. How can I trust you? I don't like you, etc. But no, we were basically saying the booking was bad. The true moment of insanity is when Challenger and supposed babyface Ken Shamrock then arrived, not to tell Jarrett to go away, but he agreed he thought this sucked too. What the flub is happening? Scott Hall then recreated his iconic WCW debut, and yep, he made it 3 for 3. He thought this was a waste of time. So imagine if you were a fan, and you had bought this on pay-per-view, 3 iconic stars were saying, what the flub did you just do with your money? We also tanked our own main event because we were told before even we got into all this it was a bunch of rubbish, and I bet it all came down to that nonsense work shoot stuff again. Not gonna say the name, we've done it a few times, you already know. But enough, please, no more.